Environmental behavior research. What is this? To understand this concept, we should recognize three main topics first: research, environments, and people's behavior. Researching is investigating and studying materials and sources to establish facts and reach new conclusions. It's about understanding theories, approaches, and concepts to formulate hypotheses and test ideas. Environment is the set of circumstances, means, and conditions by which one is surrounded. The complex of factors that act upon the life of an individual or community. Behavior is the way that a person acts in a particular situation or under particular conditions. For example, the environment. Environmental behavior research is the search for the interrelation between environment and people. It focuses on finding links between both purposes simultaneously. So, why doing it? The results of such kind of research makes it more clear to understand how people perceive environment and behave towards specific features. This can bring new links and approaches to design more suitable spaces and space conditions. It aims to increase the visibility of the side effects such changes have on people's lives. For example, if one train ride to work makes one people tense, in turn this will affect their performance at work. Following the conclusions environmental behavior studies lead to can make our design decisions easier, more clear, and based on actually observed performances, actions, and feelings. Designing and controlling simultaneously behavioral side effects. Looking forward to making architecture a way to happiness. How should we do a research? First, we need to answer: what do we want to find out? What research design will give me useful information to solve my problem? What setting will use my resources effectively? First of all, we need to define concepts, making clear explanations. Preconceptions are mental pictures on the topic based on personal experience. They can be useful points in the observations, but not something we should get stuck on. Secondly, we start formulating hypotheses, possible solutions, explanations, or answers represented in models that explain a concept. They're based on theories, experiences, and investigation. We should classify hypotheses and make decisions about the data to use to confront them with. In third place, we run tests, experiences, observations, and samplings. Research approaches consist in four types: the diagnostic and descriptive studies to provide suggestive evidence and to describe and measure as precisely as possible, the theoretical research to test specific hypotheses, and action research studies to compare the consequences of different actions. Research designs consist in a case study to develop knowledge about different aspects of one complex object. These are surveys to get details about a phenomenon through questionnaires and interviews, and experiments to test before and after the effects of actions in a particular situation. Research can be made in natural settings, in diagnostical studies to find out what is actually going on, or in contrived settings, planned and controlled research environments. The quality of the research relies on how clear, detailed, organized, and well explained the data and information in use is. This determines the validity of such work. When the hypotheses can be confirmed or disconfirmed by empirical data, they are called testable. Even studying architecture, we all wonder, how do we exactly record space? The language of space is quite specific, but yet ambiguous and meaningful. Understanding and communicating space can get intricate because we are talking about a complex, not entirely abstract entity. So, how to create better spaces? An important part would be understanding users and occupants and their needs. As humans, we have some difficulties expressing these features. Usually, we judge their likely success by comparison with our background experiences. Architects obviously have an important role understanding, managing, and converting these needs and desires into something real, functional, livable, and comfortable. We know that each group understands and perceives the world in a different way, and also has specific demands. A way of tracking these aspects is to do parametric studies, analyzing data, and find variances. We can try to understand how the space rules human behavior mainly by these features described by Kevin Lynch. The first one is identity, the special attributes of a place that makes it both recognizable and unique. The second one is structure, the order and pattern that connects and relates the various parts of a space. And finally, the meaning which the place stands for or represents. For understanding environmental behavior, we can observe it by methodically watching people using a specific place and trying to respond to the following questions. What do they do? How do activities relate to another spatially? How does spatial relation affect participants? Direct observation can make the results more trustworthy because people tend to deny some conducts they don't think are incorrect. This method is also empathetic. The advantage is that observers may assume that they personally feel in a situation, but we should be careful because not everyone feels the same. Here it is important to mention that different cultures can have different behaviors. It's important to have in consideration that some behaviors can produce another ones in a chain. So now is the point when researchers have to decide how far they will intrude and how far they will want to participate in observed events. For this, we have different kinds of observers. The secret outsider, the observer is in a distance and can be observed back. The recognized outsider, the subjects of the study know that they are being observed as part of an experiment, and this way can change some behaviors. And the participant, when the observer appears as another participant of the activity. We also have to choose the recording devices regarding the amount of detailed information each topic requires. We can use annotations, checklists, maps and plans, photographies, videos. Here is a guide to what to observe. In the moment, it's important to define which persons are relevant for the research and which ones are not. We should focus on what we want to observe. It's important to know what to look for and how to analyze this information. The best way of analyzing the act is writing down who's the actor and what is it doing. Then, when the observation is done, go to the conclusions. Analyze the situation, social-cultural context, physical settings, and spatial relationships. Here, we have to look for the relation with the environment and how this affects the relation with other people. The context is important because, for example, a person alone in a bar may want company, but the same person in a library may want to be alone to focus. There are different conclusions to take when a person is sitting on the ground, and there are available seats, and when there are not. One way to research on environmental behavior is by observing physical traces. This is a very good approach to understand why a space is perceived the way it is. It is a useful research tool because it does not alter the behavior that caused such traces. The results are easy to track and durable. We can find different kinds of physical traces. Byproducts of use like erosion or leftovers, trash. Adaptations for use like added gardens, separations, and connections, like barriers and ramps, for example. Displays of self-like personalization, photos and decoration, identification with numbers of houses, and group memberships, and public messages. Those can be official, unofficial, or even illegal. Each method catches another dimension of the trace and provides new data. We can classify them in annotated diagrams, drawings, photographies, and counting. All of these traces can help us manage and shape buildings in the best way for the users and their needs. Observing physical traces can bring new elements that planners never thought of before. Another method of research is running interviews and questionnaires. A focused interview should be negotiated in a group of people to find correspondence between the analytic structure and the respondent's mental picture of the situation. An interview guide is a loose conceptual map with a set of topics, elements, patterns, and relationships that the interviewer intends to cover. A good interview is flexible and modifiable to correspond to the conceptual map reflected in the respondent's answers. An interviewer asks questions to learn how an individual feels about something, perceives, reacts to a particular environmental situation. A focused interview uses a type of questioning used in market research. We can use focus interviews with individuals to find out in depth. How do people define a concrete situation? What they consider important about it? What effects they intend their actions to have in the situation? How do they feel about it? The quality of an interview or questionnaire data rests on how salient questions are to respondents and researchers, and whether questions are asked to be understood clearly. Some topics are particularly relevant in environmental behavior research, such as physical, administrative, and behavioral environments, people's responses to environments like seeing, feeling, doing, knowing, linking these two and using them as categories. We can also use several straightforward rules for asking questions, improving the ability to compare the answers. There's plenty of evidence throughout history of architects and city planners believing in making rules to create feelings. For example, 15th century architect Leon Alberti during Renaissance era claimed that balanced classical forms would compel aggressive invaders to put down their arms and become civilians. Jumping to the modern era, the belief system that buildings shape environment allowed the architecture masters to make all kinds of outlandish claims. Frank Lloyd Wright, for example, believed that appropriate architecture would save the US from corruption and people would become wealthier. In the 60s, the British planner called Maurice Brodie came up with a new term, architectural determinism. This was to describe the practice of groundlessly asserting that design solutions would change behavior in a predictable way. Postmodern age has destroyed this. Architects have not worried about what architecture can do to people, and the current design programs have not helped the situation either. But it is a reality that architecture can generate or avoid certain behaviors. The interactions are not only between environments to which people react during their daily life, but also their previous experiences and also their mental images of future environments. Elements like material surfaces, buildings and cities' geometries can contain repeatable patterns and subjective features that cause diverse reactions in people related to their senses and memories. For example, psychologists prove that warmer temperatures makes us feel more warm about people around us. Space syntax knowledge, introduced by Bill Hillier and colleagues since the 70s, is part of the key of all these discussions, discoveries, and lessons. It suggests complex relations in planning and design services across a big range of building types and urban scales. So, buildings' layout and sequencing can affect the decisions we make. Perhaps, for our lunch option at the cafeteria, we can feel more attracted to healthy options if they are preferably displayed. More than this, the entire layout of a school can influence kids' happiness, motivation, and achievements in class, if they have the appropriate space and conditions to enjoy the breaks and exercise freely and safe. For example, Tezuka architects kindergarten in Tokyo in a donut shape. Believing kids need to run, explore, and enjoy outside space, express themselves, and get to know obstacles makes them develop a lot of useful capacities, promote social interaction, and helpful behavior between them. Even the classroom design can be planned to make students more motivated. In shopping center, this knowledge and techniques has been used since the beginning. For example, in the escalators changing direction every day to promote different routes in the building. In some shops, the layout makes consumers go a long way promoting a consumerist behavior and more profit for the store. Charles Montgomery is a Canadian journalist creating transformative experiences about cities, science, and human well-being. He states that cities and buildings design emotional life. In his Happy City book, he shows experiments he ran together with psychologists and technology experts in cities like New York and Berlin regarding interactions in public, looking for the intersection between happiness and urban design. The results show that social trust is a big part. A city in which people trust their neighbors, it's a happy city. Another example is crime prevention through environmental design. Some principles of urban design on vulnerable environments improve spatial quality, encouraging interaction among neighbors, revitalizing degraded areas, and most of all, reducing crime rates. Egipto's neighborhood in Bogota, Colombia is a successful case study. Architecture can embrace sublime aesthetics, and that makes it great for generating feelings of wonder. Psychiatrists have found that this reduces the prevalence and severity of mood disorders. Could sublime architecture even potentially help saving lives? Observational studies tend to make us think, if so this, then that. That can get tricky, and no one can make promise in such an intricate field of research. Just because there is a correlation between factors, that does not necessarily mean there is a causation. This is the path environmental behavior research is following, searching and testing for the best features and matches between daily life and design methods for better suited architecture.